Well, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, Radio Freaks, and welcome to Chris's Corner on Radio Connection Live. I'm Chris Nussbaum, the occasional contributor who sometimes comes out of the woodwork on the occasional RCL show and always has a great time doing it. Needs to come out and do it some more. And it's been a hot minute since I've come out here and done a Chris's Corner. It's always fun when I do one, and Jamie is kind enough to give me free rein to do these. Used to do it every week when we had the live show circa, when was it, like 2014, 2015? And we had a segment, I think it was at the bottom of the first hour, and pretty much the idea was that I picked a topic, kind of riffed on it for like 5 minutes, and then I just threw it out there for the whole crew to discuss. And that's what Chris's Corner became. And then we turned that over to Jamie's Jam when I became the host of the show, which lasted for about a year-ish until I left the show to do some other stuff with the station that we were on at the time. So anyway, that's another topic entirely about RCL history, which if you've been with us for a good many years, first of all, thank you. And second of all, then you already know about that. If you're new to the show, then that is where I come in from RCL. RCL, in fact, is my introduction to doing this on the broadcasting end, in front of the mic. Radio Connection Live was the first show I ever participated in on August 2nd, 2014. It was the first time I cracked the mic open and was heard on the airwaves. So there you have it. And then I've done a bunch of stuff since, both on RCL and on various other shows. Okay, so back to the topic at hand, or should we say topics. There are some things that are happening of note in my neck of the radio woods, which we need to spend a moment on. And Jamie is kind enough to let me spend a moment on them as the person who lives in this Baltimore market and is being affected by them. So I'm going to take a moment and take them in order. One which won't take a long time, and the other which might take a longer time, and more because the second is a little more personal to me. And the first one's just interesting. So we'll start with this one. If y'all been following the saga of the murder of the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, this is the health insurance company, which we may have various feelings about. The health insurance industry is all kinds of interesting. And there was a guy that decided that he was going to take everybody's problems with the health insurance industry into his own hands and kill a guy in New York City. And Brian Thompson was on his way to a meeting and gets shot on the street. That's on December 4th, I think it was, sometime in the beginning of December. So there's this massive manhunt underway, and they find this guy in Altoona, Pennsylvania. They arrest him. He's now been extradited to New York, where he will likely be put on trial, and if found guilty, well, then we know what will happen from there. So who is this guy? The guy suspected of murdering Brian Thompson is a 26-year-old man by the name of Luigi Mangione. Now, of course, when the first thing I thought of when I heard of the name Luigi was Mario, Luigi. That's the first thing I thought of, and I'm sure that a lot of other people were doing that too. But then, being from Maryland, I was listening to local news, and there's this thing that comes across our local news, and whatever I was listening to, I don't know if it was WBAL now or one of the local TV channels. I don't know what I was listening to at the time, but it was like, breaking news, suspected murderer of United Healthcare CEO is found to be from Maryland. So now, of course, we're like, oh, that's interesting. So we're learning more about this guy, and we find out that his last name is Mangione. And I'm listening to it. First, I hear that he went to the Gilman School. Now, if you're not from Maryland, you probably don't know what that means, and that doesn't have any significance to you. So I'll explain that the Gilman School is this really elite private college prep school, like super expensive all-boys school in Baltimore County. But the other interesting thing is this name Mangione. I have heard that name before, and I'm trying to figure out where. I had thought that it had something to do with radio. And if memory served, I thought it had something to do with WCBM. So I texted Carrie Gaddis, who had been my supervisor when I interned with Carroll County Public Schools in their communications office. Before she came to CCPS, she had worked in radio for many years, mostly in the news side of radio, and she did a lot of work with WCBM. She was their news director. So I was like, hey, Carrie, is that the same Mangione family that owns WCBM? And she looked at it and wrote me back about a half hour later, and she's like, yep, I'm pretty sure it is. So then I did a little Googling. And it does seem that not only is this Luigi Mangione guy related to a state delegate, Nino Mangione, who happened to, before he got into politics, work at WCBM. He is also the grandson of Nick Mangione, who, before he died, owned WCBM along with its sister station, which I'm forgetting the call letters of now, but the frequency is 1370. I think it's Q1370, something like that. Now, little background here. So Nick Mangione takes over WCBM in the late 80s. And Mangione is this businessman in Baltimore who is involved in many different industries. And most importantly, he's involved in real estate development. He owns several resorts, most notably Turf Valley, which, as those who are from this area know, is this very fancy country club resort in Hunt Valley. Think Mar-a-Lago. Along with another country club, along with some other stuff. I do not remember it. I'm not looking at it, what all he owns. But basically what Nick Mangione does is he rescues WCBM out of bankruptcy. At the same time, WFBR, which is a popular news talk station, is also having a lot of financial problems. And they're about to change format. So they're about to change ownership and they're about to change format. And as we all know, when the format changes, all of the talent from the old format is usually fired. So when Nick Mangione takes over WCBM, he brings over the old WFBR people. People such as, Baltimore people, listen, Frank Luber, Tom Marr, Les Consolving, and others that we may not know for those of us who started listening later on. Oh yes, and Carrie Gaddis as news director. And, oh, by the way, he did this other thing. He brought on this other guy who was new at the time that he wanted to take a chance on. And he put him on in the midday. Oh, yeah, what was his name? That would be Rush Limbaugh. He put him on from noon to 3. So that's Nick Mangione. And his grandson is Luigi Mangione, who is now arrested and charged with the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. So, interesting little twist to that situation. And we have a radio connection, not to be confused with Radio Connection Live, a radio connection to that particular case. And funnily enough, WCBM, as I mentioned, is a news talk station. So one of the things I was curious about was whether that family connection would influence the way the story is covered. And it looks like it doesn't really, because it's mostly a national story, which is happening in another state. And so it's covered by their national news distributors. And the rest of the Mangione family, from their statements that they've put out publicly, is just devastated, and understandably so. But in any case, WCBM and their on-air talent, their news talent, seems to be covering this like everybody else. Besides which, Nick Mangione Sr. passed away in 2008 or something along those lines. So there you have that going on in Baltimore. So here's the second thing which took place in Baltimore just this week. In fact, the last part of it happened today. And this one is going to be a little hard to talk about. If you follow Radio Connection Live on Facebook, you will have already known about it. Or if you follow Radio Insight, which we often use for show prep, you will have already known about it. But for those who don't know, Lori DeYoung, the long time and beloved morning DJ at 93.1 WPOC, the country station in Baltimore, owned by iHeartMedia, has been let go after a long and storied 39-year stint, unheard of in that business. 39-year stint hosting mornings on WPOC, where she obviously has become a staple in our community. This was announced on her show and on her Facebook page on Tuesday, the 17th. A special show was aired today, Saturday, the 21st, and that show was her last. You may remember Lori because back in 2021, we had the honor of interviewing her on Radio Connection Live. That booking was no easy feat, and I will talk about that in a minute. But suffice it to say that all of us agree. Of course, I was a little biased because I wanted that interview really badly personally, and it was like a dream come true for me. But all of us agree that it was a fun interview, and she couldn't have been any nicer. Lori has been a part of my life literally since the day I was born. Really just a constant presence. I've talked about this before, but it's been a few years. And for all of us, there's that first person you think of when you think of radio, that first voice you heard on the radio. If you have ever wanted to be on the radio, it's like, who did you want to be like? For me, that's her. So let's just say that this week, and especially today, listening to the last show, has been a bit emotional for me. I'm in a group chat with Jamie and Preston as we're listening to the show, and I'm just like, I'm not crying, you're crying. And some of these songs that she's playing, I'll get to that in a minute also, are not helpful. I'm like, Lori, come on. In any case, a couple stories for you to just kind of go down memory lane with Lori. As I mentioned, I don't remember a day where she wasn't a presence in my life, because she's been on since 1986, 1985, something like that, and I was born in 98. So she's always been on mornings on WPOC, and that was the station that I grew up listening to. That was the station that my parents had on in the car. It was the station that we almost always had on in the house. I as I got older, I started, exploring further, but, in the beginning, POC was it. So, when I first started to think, I want to do this, and I became a radio freak, like, I want to be Lori, right? So a few things. First of all, there were many times when I called her, and I mean when I was little, but this was over many years, trying to win contests, just trying to call and talk with her and, answer these questions she would put out to listeners. She'd ask like survey questions and then, call 410-481-WPOC. And, I'd call her and it would end up, because it's me, that I would just want to talk with her. And she, for some reason that I can't figure out now, would keep me on the phone. And I'm thinking now, like, she was too busy for that. But that is the kind of person that she is. Somebody said on Facebook, this is one of her former colleagues, that listeners have asked him, is she really that nice? And he said, no, probably nicer. And I can believe that. There have been a couple times when I've met her in person, the first of which, at least so far as I can remember, was at a live remote at the opening of a store. I think it was at a phone store of some kind, like AT&T or something like that, in Westminster, Maryland. Westminster is about a, 45 minute or more drive from Baltimore. So she didn't come up our way very often. So what, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, whatever, in their right mind would ask their parents to go to the opening of a store to meet the DJ who was promoting it? Answer, me. So on a Saturday or whatever it was, Saturday afternoon, I guess, we went, and I went and saw Lori. And as I recall, of course, it's been a while, so I may be wrong about this, but as I recall, she let me hang out in the booth with her for like an hour, just probably peppering her with questions, which she patiently answered. One thing I do remember is as we left, she almost gave me her phone number until my parents, probably wisely, stopped her from doing so. I wish I had that number now so I could call and thank her. Best I could do was send her a message on Facebook, which I did today. The other was a concert at the Hippodrome. Kenny Rogers was there on a Christmas tour, and it was the Hippodrome Theater in downtown Baltimore, and she had worked it out, I guess, with my parents, she and WPOC, to go and meet him backstage. But it was a surprise to me. I don't know how old I was at this point. So For those who haven't been to the Hippodrome has this really long staircase between the lobby and the theater itself, like to get to your seats. So I'm going down this staircase. And of course, I got my cane, but it's only like 1 or 2 steps ahead of me. And I get to this point where I'm just like, when is this thing ever going to end? And then I hear this voice. 1 more step. And just stop. Is that who I think it is? I just kind of turn in disbelief. And of course, it was who I thought it was. I don't know who I was more excited to meet that night, Kenny or Lori, but knowing me and knowing her, I think I know who I was more excited to meet. I have talked with her on the phone, as I mentioned many times. There was a thing that she did for many years. For some reason, in the past 4 or 5 years, she stopped doing it. But there was a thing that she did for a long time on I think it was the last show before Christmas, where she would do the 12 Days of Christmas song. And she had 12 people on the line, and she would assign each to do a part. Or actually, hold on, I take that back. She didn't have 12 callers. She had, I forget how many callers, plus her and the other people on the show. So, you'd have like one person doing Partridge in a Pear Tree, and another person doing 2 turtle doves, and another person doing 3 French hens, another person doing 4 calling birds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I had been trying to get on that thing for years, and one year I finally did, and I forget which part I was, but it was cool. It was a lot of fun. So many, many, many memories, of course, and and then there's, I'm 5, and I had surgery to have my eye removed, and that was a surgery which had kind of a painful recovery, and I, of course, the radio freak that I am, I had the radio on all the time during that recovery, and I needed her on. I needed WPOC on. So there's that too, and being sick and, wanting her on the radio. So, just a constant presence. And now she's gone. Not passed, but gone from the air. And the sad thing is that it wasn't her decision. I knew that she would retire at some point. I mean, 39 years, come on. But the fact that we got less than a week's notice, and that it was just, hey, we've got budget cuts and you're going to be gone. Now, at least they had the class at iHeart to give her a last show and to give her the opportunity to say goodbye, and to give her the opportunity to have a weekend show occasionally and be at the occasional station event, to the extent that station events are still even a thing. The weekend shows will start in February, I believe. So she will still be somewhat of a presence, but not anywhere near as much of one. Michael J. and Bethany will be taking over in the morning. Michael J., I'm excited about that. Michael J. has been doing afternoons for a really long time. He's been there for, like over 20 years. I remember him for most of my life doing the afternoon shift. Partially middays, most of the time afternoons. And then Bethany is one of the newcomers to Lori's show, so that should be a good pairing. And then St. Pierre of the morning show will be on afternoons. So good for iHeart for keeping the morning show local, because I would have a big problem if they replaced Lori with the syndicated show. It's not Bobby Bones' fault. I'm not, dissing Bobby Bones. Nothing wrong with him. I'm just saying, you're not going to get rid of such a fixture as Lori and then just go and replace her with the same syndicated guy, the same syndicated show you've got on most country stations in the market. So fortunately for iHeart, they were smart enough not to do that. We half kidded when we interviewed her that it was a good thing that iHeart decided not to carry the syndicated show in the morning, because if they had canceled her in favor of the syndicated show, they knew that there would be thousands of listeners picketing the studio, of which I would have been one. But, that's how it goes. I had remarked to Jamie that just when I think I like iHeart, they do things like this. And I know they're between a rock and a hard place, because budget cuts are budget cuts. But, man, the way this collateral damage stuff works it's hard. And the emotions and the memories which are stirred up just remind us of the bond and the magic and the intimacy which only come from radio. And I mentioned the songs that she was playing. This is classic Lori, but she mixed in today on her last show the new stuff that POC always plays, because they're a new country station, with some classics. And some were especially meaningful to the last show. One of the ones that she played was The River by Garth Brooks, which I just love, period. I just love that song. But that was the one that really got me. I was already like, okay, I'm probably going to cry at some point. But I was thinking she's going to go until 10. I'll be fine until like 9:30. Yeah, it's like 7:45 and she plays this song. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. So I'm just going to close here, or close this part anyway, and then I have like 2 minutes on another subject with some words from that song. The bridge and the chorus goes, there's bound to be rough waters, and I know I'll take some falls, but with the good Lord as my captain, I can make it through them all. And I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. Like a bird upon the wind, these waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. So I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. We love you, Lori. We're going to miss you. If you check our RCL Facebook page, you'll see a message that I sent to her on Facebook. Finally, one quick thing on a much lighter note. So, I grew up here, lived in a few different places, but I grew up here, so I thought I'd discovered all the radio stations in the Baltimore market. Apparently not. I made a discovery this week, which I'm going to have to check out a little more. And of all places, I discovered it while I was in an Uber coming home from a work event. As I mentioned, I live in Westminster, which is up in Carroll County, a little distance from Baltimore, and I work for an organization that's based in Towson, which is a suburb of Baltimore. So I'm coming home, and the Uber guy has this talk show on with a lady that I've never even heard of. And so I asked him, what are we listening to? And he says it's the station called WEAA. I'm like, never heard of it. Okay, so I'm going to keep listening. And I learn as we're driving that it's the station of Morgan State University. And the format is cool jazz. The branding is your home for cool jazz and more. And it also has the slogan, the voice of the community. So community radio, I don't know if you call it freeform, I mean college radio, but also has some talk programming, local, seems like some of it's syndicated, but what we were listening to at the time is a local talk show called Today with Dr. K, a lady named Dr. K. Wise Whitehead. And she's a professor there, it looks like, and also a kind of community leader and talk show host and commentator and all kinds of stuff. And I mean, we were talking about everything, man. Like we were doing, when I came in, they were talking about like parenting and how to discipline kids. And, I'm in this Uber for like an hour between traffic and just the drive home. And we're going from that into like, current events to who kids are looking up to. I mean, we got everything going on, man. It was wild. And the calls she's taken. So that was 3 to 6 p.m., of course, Eastern, weekdays on WEAA. It's called Today with Dr. K. Interesting. I always texted Jamie, I'm like, we've got our own Dr. Laura, apparently. And I thought that's what it was when we were talking about parenting. I thought, okay, I guess she's like some kind of psychologist or something. No, apparently not. Apparently she's much more than that. I don't know, but it was really interesting. So, all right. And I Googled her, and she's been around for a while. So, new station, new show, new discovery in Baltimore. All right, there you go again. WEAA, the college station of Morgan State University. Check